All right, guys, here we are, week 6, module 3. We're going to do some comparing and contrasting between Gandhi and MLK Jr. There's no language section for this today, so it's a little bit shorter. You're welcome for your Friday. Our objective, though, is to be able to compare and contrast. So how are they similar and how are they different? The resistance movements of Gandhi to Martin Luther King Jr. At the end of this, you should be able to answer the question, how did Gandhi and his resistance movements influence Martin Luther King Jr.? At the end of today, you need to have this entire Google Doc finished and turned in and your mastery check done in Edulastic. All right, so what I do now, you're going to click on these 2 video links and watch the videos about MLK Jr.'s, his nonviolent movement, and then there's going to be a quick question about it. So this first one is a video from the movie Selma. Was created in 2014. This is the first march. So this is not the real life one. This is Selma. And then the second one is the Selma bridge scene. So again, like fictionalized versions of it, but pretty accurate. I also want to note that the first one in particular, this first video, it definitely has a lot of violence. There's a trigger warning at the beginning of the video, but I think giving you one here as well. This is fictionalized, but obviously it did happen in real life, so just be aware of that when you're watching it. This question that you're answering here is, how were MLK's protests similar to the ones you heard about this week from Gandhi in India? And so you're responding to this question, MLK's protests were similar to Gandhi's because. Think about his reactions to the crowd, the people's reactions, the police and everyday people that lined the bridge in both scenes. How were those similar to the British? So you're really looking at this one for similarities. Once you've done that, we're going to move on to the guided practice. You're going to follow along with this reading, and when you're finished, you're going to move on to the independent practice. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Civil Rights Movement in the United States. During the Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 1960s, many African American activists drew comparisons between their struggles against white supremacy in the United States and Indians' hardships under British rule. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. embraced Satyagraha as a guiding principle for the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott in 1955 to 56 and later campaigns. While Dr. King remained committed to Satyagraha, which he often referred to as soul force, other civil rights activists were skeptical that nonviolence would be effective against the persistent or the constant threat of violence from white supremacists. Not many people realize how big of an effect Gandhi had on the rest of the world, and even MLK used his teachings, so it's pretty powerful. Dr. Martin Luther King, his influence speaks of world consciousness, Hindustani Times, January 30th, 1958. So this is coming from Hindustani Times, which is an Indian newspaper. Quote, Mahatma Gandhi has done more than any other person in history to reveal that social problems can be solved without resorting to primitive methods of violence. In this sense, he is more than a saint of India. He belongs, as they say of Abraham Lincoln, to the ages. In our struggle against racial segregation in Montgomery, Alabama, I came to see at a very early stage that a combination of Gandhi's methods of nonviolence and the Christian ethics of love is the best weapon available to African Americans for this struggle for freedom and human dignity. It may be well that the Gandhian approach, so Gandhi's approach, will bring about a solution to the race problem in America. His spirit is a continual reminder to oppressed people that it is possible to resist evil and yet not resort to violence. So you know you're on track if you know that you're understanding this material. You can see that Gandhi believed, or MLK believed in what Gandhi was teaching, this idea of nonviolence. And he actually thought it would be what would help fix the race problem in the United States. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., transcript from Press Conference USA radio broadcast July 5th, 1963. Some years ago, when I finished studying the Gandhian philosophy and the method of nonviolent resistance, I came to the conclusion that it was the most potent or the strongest weapon available to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom and human dignity. And I would say that this all-over direct action movement, with its sit-ins, its stand-ins, its wait-ins, its kneel-ins, its mass marches and pilgrimages, and all the other elements that enter the struggle, have been patterned a great deal after Gandhi's. So many actions that MLK was famous for were actually done by Gandhi first, in the 1930s and 40s in India. This idea of sit-ins, stand-ins, mass marches and pilgrimages. So think about like the Salt March to the Sea is very similar to the March of Selma. Once you're done with, now that we're done with reading that, you're going to go to the independent practice. We did this a little bit earlier in this trimester, where you choose 3 this time. We had some feedback that I think the last time we said 5. It was way too many. So you're only choosing 3. Again, like you only have to do 3. Do not do all of them. And there's, not sure what this watch this video is. We're going to get rid of that. Weird. There's no video to watch, but just do 3 of them. So the first one, you're pretending you are Gandhi and you're writing a letter to MLK, trying to convince him to use nonviolence. So obviously we know like he did use nonviolence, but think about what would Gandhi say to MLK to urge him to use that as the primary means of protest. It has to be a 4-sentence minimum. We've already given you some of the sentence starters. Choice 2, again, only 3 of these. You have to argue, or you get to argue. Based on what you know, who do you think was the more successful leader? Do you think it was MLK or do you think it was Gandhi? And you're going to have to look at the other modules to help you address the Gandhi question for sure. Choice 3, create a list of questions that MLK might have asked Gandhi before starting his protest, and then pretend you are Gandhi answering those questions. So you've got your questions from MLK, your answers from Gandhi, and you're kind of thinking through both of those. Choice 4, you're finding 3 pieces of evidence that prove that MLK was influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. So you have to find it in the videos, you can find it elsewhere online, you can find it kind of within those little bits and snippets of the reading above. And then the last choice that you have, this is the challenge one, it's a little bit like more serious. You're creating a movie poster for the movie about either MLK. So like if you were imagining you were creating a movie poster for Selma, the movie that showed the march, or one for Mahatma Gandhi, like where the Sikhs protest came from Gandhi. Your poster needs to be drawn on a piece of paper and you need to take a picture of it and send it to me. It needs a title, 3 items, people, landscapes, objects, etc., and why people should want to see your movie. Make sure that you are picking 3. It just has to be 3, but they do all need to be done. You're filling them in this section here. Again, choice 1 is the letter from MLK to Gandhi. Choice 2 is the more successful leader. You're choosing between Gandhi or MLK and giving evidence to provide that. Choice 3 is the questions from MLK to Gandhi. And then Gandhi's answers to MLK. Choice 4, evidence to prove that Gandhi influenced MLK. It can come from above, it can come from the other modules. And choice 5, your movie poster. Again, it needs to be completed on a separate piece of paper. When you're done, you're taking a picture and sending it to me, your social studies teacher. That's Miss Wynn. You can also send it to Mr. Marsh if you wanted to do that. That's okay with me. Once you're done with that, you're turning in this module. There is no extra mastery check for today, and you're good to have a great weekend. Remember, the key points from this is that Dr. King was influenced really heavily by Gandhi's nonviolence resistance movements, and that influence can be seen in the actions of the civil rights movement. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.